Beating Josh McDaniels wasn't just a victory on the field. For the Raiders, it was a statement, a shift in tone. A reminder that this team isn't just drifting through another rebuild, it's finding its footing, rewriting its own narrative. When you out-execute the coach who once ran your building, you don't just walk away with a win, you walk away with something bigger. You walk away with belief. The buzz leading into the game had very little to do with the Raiders. National chatter circled the Patriots, their supposed leap forward, the trendy playoff sleeper tags. Analysts rolled out the same tired phrases, double the win total, second-year leap, all the buzzwords. Then, almost overnight, the script flipped. The Raiders took them down, and suddenly the conversation wasn't about how great New England was going to be, but about how maybe, just maybe, this Raiders team had been overlooked again. That's the cycle. That's why predictions so often miss this franchise. They glance at the roster, skim the names, shrug at the unfamiliar, and move on. What they don't see is the work happening beneath the surface, the growth of a coaching staff that's sharper than it's been in years, the rookies who aren't just projects but real contributors, and the depth being built into every position group. Jacoby Myers set the tone at wide receiver. He looked like a true WR1, reliable, confident, and explosive. Brock Bowers, even after taking a knock to the knee that briefly shook the fan base, came right back with 5 catches for more than 100 yards, flashing the kind of game-breaking potential that makes defensive coordinators sweat. When he needed a breather, Michael Mayer stepped in without missing a beat. That's not luck. That's roster construction. That's depth. Most teams in a tight game panic when their top weapon goes to the sideline. The Raiders calmly leaned on their next option, proving that they've built a system of answers, not just isolated playmakers, and that depth wasn't just visible on offense. Defensively, the Raiders finally looked like a unit that could punch back. Devin White looked like the player he was always supposed to be. Fast, physical, disruptive. Tyree Wilson and Malcolm Kunsey showed flashes of real growth, hinting at a future where they're more than just supporting cast members around Max Crosby. Because Crosby was, as always, a force of nature. Double-teamed constantly, he still disrupted plays, still wrecked snaps, still reminded everyone why he's one of the most feared defenders in the league. If Wilson, Kunsey, and Butler can combine to bring even a fraction of Crosby's relentless impact across every down, this defense suddenly transforms. It goes from fragile to formidable, capable of living in chaos and thriving on high-leverage moments. But no story defined the win more than Geno Smith, the quarterback who arrived in Las Vegas, with more questions than answers, gave a performance that may have silenced the doubts once and for all. 9 completions of 20-plus yards. That ties the most by a Raiders quarterback in a single game since 1991. That's not just a stat. That's history. In hostile territory, in the rain, against a defensive head coach, Geno didn't flinch. He put the ball where it needed to be, time and time again, showing the kind of poise that separates ordinary quarterbacks from ones who can actually lead a team forward. The trade for Geno had been criticized, even mocked, by some. Why give up assets for a player many saw as a journeyman? But for the cost of a third-round pick, the Raiders may have landed their most talented quarterback since Derek Carr's peak seasons. And some argue he could be their most skilled passer since 2016, when Carr was an MVP candidate before injury struck. That kind of arm talent, paired with this system, suddenly looks like a perfect match. What stood out wasn't just the raw production. It was the orchestration. Chip Kelly's fingerprints were everywhere, sequenced motions that froze defenses, play action calls at exactly the right moments, chips and releases that bought crucial edges against the rush, misdirection layered upon misdirection, designed to open space at the second and third levels of the field. But the brilliance of design means nothing if the quarterback can't pull the trigger. Geno did over and over again. He turned Kelly's playbook into a masterclass in execution. Even so, there's no pretending this team is flawless. The offensive line still needs to protect better. The secondary still has gaps to tighten, especially as opponents with stronger passing games loom. But what's different is the feeling. For once, it doesn't seem like the Raiders are grasping at straws, scrambling week to week without a clear plan. The bones are solid. The direction is clear. The quarterback is right. The staff is aligned. And the roster has multiple ways to attack opponents. That balance is what makes this team dangerous. Last year, too often it felt like the Raiders were leaning on make-believe football, patching holes, hoping for magic, and too often coming up short. Now it feels like chess. Moves made with purpose. Adjustments that carry weight. And most importantly, answers for when Plan A doesn't work. Max Crosby and the defense embody that blueprint. They won't always dominate every snap, but they'll create timely negatives, force mistakes, and swing games with a single turnover. Against the Patriots, they flirted with bust in the first half, then flipped the game with pressure, with chaos, with sequencing that rattled the quarterback. That's how this unit has to win, by embracing volatility, by finding the one or two plays that turn a contest on its head. It's also about glue, guys. When Landon Roberts went down, Dion White stepped up, shooting gaps, making tackles, giving the defense stability when it could have wobbled. Those kinds of contributions are what separate close losses from close wins. And right now, the Raiders are finally stacking enough of them together to change the outcomes that haunted them in the past. The offensive side shows the same philosophy. The running game didn't pop statistically, but the Raiders didn't panic. Instead, they leaned on flexibility. Bowers taking wide receiver reps, Myers stretching the field, Geno delivering precision strikes. Ashton Jeanty will find his rhythm as the line gels, but until then, the team has multiple ways to manufacture production. That's what good teams do. They don't stall when one piece isn't clicking. They adapt. Look around the league. Week 1 is chaos everywhere. The Bengals nearly fell into the same trap as last season. A handful of quarterbacks looked like Hall of Famers one moment and rookies the next. The Colts aren't going 17-0. It's always messy out of the gate. But what actually translates beyond the noise is execution on key downs, coaching adjustments that matter, and how you stack up against the teams in your tier. On all those fronts, the Raiders passed their first test. That doesn't mean they'll steamroll their schedule. There will be setbacks. They could lose tight games to the Chargers and Commanders and still be on the right trajectory. But the difference is credibility. For the first time in years, the process feels real. It's not smoke and mirrors. It's not hype built on false hope. It's the product of a regime that knows what it's doing, a staff that's aligned, and a quarterback capable of carrying the load. The AFC West is as competitive as it's been in years. Justin Herbert and the Chargers remain dangerous. The Chiefs are still the Chiefs. Even the Broncos have pieces. But with Geno distributing, with Kelly scheming, with Crosby leading a defense that has complementary pieces finally emerging, the Raiders aren't just passengers, they're players. So what does it all mean? It means this wasn't a cute September upset destined to fade. It was a glimpse into what this team can become when everything aligns. The Raiders don't look like a group guessing at answers anymore. They look like a group building them. And in the NFL, that's everything. This wasn't just a win over Josh McDaniels. It was a win over the past. A sign that the mistakes and chaos that defined this team for so long might finally be giving way to structure, to direction, to a plan that actually works. There's plenty left to fix, but the bones are right. The quarterback is right. The staff is aligned. And for once, the Raiders feel like they aren't chasing the rest of the league. They're carving out their own path forward. Now the question is simple. Was this performance the start of something real, or just another early season spark destined to burn out? Can Geno Smith sustain this level of play against the tougher defenses coming down the road? And will the depth hold up when injuries inevitably pile up? Raiders fans, I want to hear from you. Do you believe this is the year the team finally turns the corner, or are you cautious about buying in too soon? Drop your thoughts in the comments below.